Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and in this video we're going to learn how to make HTTP calls in React using this awesome library called Axios. And we're going to do that by creating this tiny application that's going to fetch the number of repositories that a user has on their GitHub profile. Now, Axios is a promise-based HTTP client for JavaScript application, and it makes it really easy to make asynchronous HTTP calls to any external API. Okay, so before we dive into this video, I do want to let you know that I expect you to be familiar with the basics of React. So you should know what React components are, what state is, what props are, just the basic stuff. And if you're somebody who's new to React, or if you need a React refresher, then I do have a React for Beginners video on my YouTube channel, so go check that out. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to install this Create React app package on our computer. Now, if you already have your own build configuration, then feel free to use that, but I like to use Create React app because it saves me a lot of time. So to install it, just go to your terminal and type in npm install create-react-app-g. Now, this command is telling npm to install this package globally on your machine. Now, I already have it installed, but once you have installed it, let it do its thing and then come back to this video. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to use this Create React app package to initialize our project. So I'm first going to navigate to my desktop and I'm going to type in create-react-app followed by the name of the project. Now, in my case, I'm going to call it Axios-React. Press enter. And now it's just grabbing all the dependencies and the build configuration that it needs for this project to run. So it may take a minute or two, so let's just give a bit of time. Okay, so once it's done its thing, right there at the bottom, it's first asking us to navigate to this project folder and then type in yarn start. Now keep in mind that this could be npm start in your case, so if it says npm start, just type in npm start. Okay, so let's go ahead and navigate to the folder and type in yarn start. Now this command is going to launch a live server, and that is where our project is going to run. Okay, now let's go ahead and open this into a code editor. I use Visual Studio Code, and this is just a lot of boilerplate code that Create React app provides us with. So I'm going to crack open this app.js file, and I'm just going to get rid of some of the lines because we don't really need it. So we don't need this logo import, so I'm going to get rid of that. We don't need this paragraph tag, so I'm going to delete that. We don't need this image tag, I'm going to get rid of that as well. And I'm going to change this title to HTTP calls in React. Excellent. Now if I go back to the web browser, the logo is gone, but I don't like how lengthy this header is. I would like the height to be a little narrower. So let's go back to this app.css file, which is being imported to this app.js file, and I'm going to get rid of this app.logo style because we deleted that. I'm going to get rid of this app intro, and I'm also going to get rid of this keyframe animation. Okay, and this is what we need to change in order to change the height of the header. So I'm going to reduce that to 70 pixels. Press save. That looks much better. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we are going to create a GitHub application. We're going to create this application that's going to grab the number of repositories that a user has on their GitHub profile. So obviously, to enter a username, we need an input field and a form where we can make that happen. So to do that, let's just go ahead and create a form. So in the source folder, I'm going to create a new folder called components. And within this components folder, I'm going to create a new file. I'm going to call it user form.js. Now within there, I'm first going to import React from React. And this is going to be a stateless functional component. So I'm going to set it to an arrow function. And before I forget, I'm just going to export this right here at the bottom because we're going to need to import that into our app.js file. So export default user form. And within this component, I'm just going to return some JSX. So I'm going to open up a form tag. Oops, we don't need this action, so I'm going to get rid of that. Within this form tag, I'm going to include an input field. And I'm also going to give it a name because this name is what we're going to use in order to grab the values that whatever we type in. So name is going to be username. And I'm also going to add a button right there at the bottom. So I'm going to say button submit. Okay, now the only thing that's left is we first need to import this into our main app.js file. So import user form from /components and then user form. And let's just render it out right there. So user form, excellent. Let's go back to the web browser and refresh. It appears, yeah, there's the form. Now I don't like that it's showing on the same line as the button, so let's just add a bit of styling. And I'm actually going to add the inline styling in this form tag. So I'm going to open up a style attribute, set it to a couple of JavaScript expressions, and this is an object where you can specify the styles. So the first one's going to be margin top, and I'm going to set that to 20 pixels on the top and bottom and also on left and right. And I'm also going to give it another property called display, and I'm going to set that to block. So now they should display on separate lines, but this isn't working for some reason, so let's go ahead and fix that. Oh, this should just be margin actually. Okay, that should work. Okay, there we go, that looks much better. And now we need a function that we need to hook to this form in order to make it work. So let's go back to app.js file and create a function called getUser. And I'm going to set it to an arrow function. And I'm going to give this an argument e. Now this e is the event object in JavaScript. It's nothing specific to React. So we can use this e object to do stuff like preventing the default behavior of a web page. So for example, let's say I want to prevent the default behavior when I submit this form. So what this is going to do is it's going to prevent this page from reloading once we press the submit button. So to make that happen, we need to make use of this e.prevent defaults command. Okay, now let's just go ahead and grab the values that we need from the form. So if you remember, we set the name attribute to username, and this is what we're going to use to grab the value. So I'm going to create a new constant called user, and this is going to be e. So e.target.elements.username, and again this username is what we set up right there. .username.value. Okay, now let's just go ahead and console.log user. And before I forget, we first need to hook this function to this form component. So I'm gonna pass this as props. So I'm gonna call it getUser equals this. So this dot getUser. Okay. So now that we have passed this function as props to this component, that means we have access to this function in this userform.js file. So in order to access this function, the props of this component, we need to give it an argument called props. So now right there I can say on submit equals props. So on the props we have this getUser available, so props.getUser. Okay, press save there, go back to the web browser, and let's open up the developer tools. So let's just type in a name. I'm just going to type in mine, which is Hamza, submit, and boom, it's showing up. So everything that we've done so far is working perfectly. Okay, so what do we need to do next? Well, like I said, we're going to work with an external library called Axios. So it doesn't come built into React, so that means we have to first install it manually. So just go back to your terminal, I'm going to create a new tab, and I'm going to say yarn add Axios. Now again, if you don't have yarn installed, just type in npm install Axios. Is the same thing, okay? But in my case, I'm just going to say yarn add Axios. Press enter. And there we go. We now have yarn installed. Now, in order to make use of this library, we first need to import this into our app.js file. So I'm going to say import Axios from Axios. Excellent. Now, if you remember, again, I'm repeating it, we need to make a call to the GitHub API, which means we need the GitHub API's link, okay? And the link is https://api.github.com/users/ it's followed by the name of the user, and for now let's just type in John. Now if I copy this link, go to the web browser and paste it right there. There you go. This is basically giving me everything that I need in order to access from this API. So we have the username, which is John, we have their ID. There's a bunch of things that we can grab, but the other thing that we are concerned with is this public repos property, okay? And that is what we're going to use from this JSON object. Excellent. Now how do we make use of this Axios library? Well, within this get user function, that is where we're going to use this Axios library. So right there, I'm going to say Axios.get, and I'm just going to go ahead and copy this link, paste it there. And guys, make sure you get used to using these template strings, because this is a good practice. Even if you don't need to include any variables into your string, just make sure you still use it, because it's just a good practice. And now I'm gonna replace this John with a template literal, and this user it is what's going to go in there. So remember, this user is what's coming from whatever we type into this input field. Okay, brilliant. So now this statement doesn't end right there. What we need to do next is we need to resolve our promise. Now, like I said, Axios is a promise-based JavaScript client. So that means we first need to resolve our promise by typing in then. Okay, let me just break it down to a separate line. And this then is what returns the results of whatever we get back from this API. And let's just store that into a variable called res. Now, I must tell you that this then function takes in a callback function, something like this, and then whatever argument we pass in right there is basically the results of the data that we get back from the API. Okay, so dot then, and then this res, it's storing the results that we need from this API. Okay, and this is a callback function, so let's just go ahead and open that up. So right there, let's just console.log this res, see what we get back. So console.log res. Okay, now let's put this to test. So go back to our application. Let's just type in a username. Let's type in John. Submit. And there we go. We get back an object. And within this object, we have a bunch of properties. So if you remember, this is the same thing as what we typed in right there. So login ID, avatar URL. There we go. It's the exact same thing. And this is the bare bones of working with APIs. All we need to do is you just dig into the API, the JSON object that the API returns, you find the properties that you need, and then you include that into your application. Okay? So let's just go ahead and continue working with our application now. So what do we need to do now? Well, we need to store this. The property that we need to grab is this public repos right there. And we need to store this somewhere in our application. And now we're going to make use of something called state. So let's just go ahead and initialize our state in the app component. So state equals an object. And this object is going to have a property called repos. And for now, let's just set it to null, because in the beginning, it's going to be null. Okay? So now, what do we need to do next? Well, first, let's just dig into this object and see what we need to actually grab. So it's res.data.public repos. So let's just create a new constant, call it repos. So res.data.public_URL. Let's get rid of that and let's try console logging this constant that we've just created. So console.log repos. Okay, let's go back to the application, type in the username, John, press submit, and it's not working for some reason, so let's see why. Public repos. Okay, this should work. Submit, and there we go. Excellent. Now all we need to do is we just need to set the value of the state to this repos that we're getting back. So to do that, just type in this.setState, and the property that we need is repos, and we need to set this to repos. Excellent. And one neat little trick in the ES6 JavaScript is that if the name of the property and the value are the same, then you can actually just make it a shorthand, something like this. Okay? And that's only working because the name of the property and the name of the value are the same. If it was something like repos and repo or data, then we would actually have to type in like this. But since it's just repos, which means this and this are the same, in which case we can actually just go ahead and shorthand it like this. Okay, press enter, go back to the application, make sure that it's still working, type in John, press submit, and it's not working. And that is because we didn't console.log anything. So to change that, now what do we need to do next? Well, now that we have set the values to the state, we need to display it somehow on the web page. So just below this user form component, let's go ahead and open up a JavaScript expression. And we're going to make use of something called the ternary operator. And it's very much the same as working with if-else statements. So let me just type it out first, and then I will explain that to you. So I'm going to type in this.state.repos, question mark, render out a paragraph that says number of repos is this.state.repos, colon, render out a paragraph. Oops. Actually, this should be outside of this paragraph. So colon, render out a paragraph that says please enter a username. Okay, so what's happening there? First, let's just go back to the web browser. So if we don't enter a username, it's asking us to enter a username, and once we enter a username, press submit, it's not doing anything. Okay, let's try that again. Right, anyway, I'm gonna, well, there's the issue, repos. Okay, please enter username, type in John, press submit, number of repos, and it's not showing any repos, and let me explain that first. So what's this ternary operator doing here? Well, this is the same as using an if-else statement. So it would look something like if this.state.repos, if this exists, that means if this is not an empty value, just go ahead and render out this paragraph, just like so. Else, just render out a paragraph that says please enter a username. And I found another mistake. I mistyped repos there. That's why it wasn't showing up there. So anyway, So yeah, this is the same as using an if-else statement, but we cannot use if-else statements or any of these pure JavaScripty things inside of JSX. So right there we're making a check. So if this.state.repos, so if this.state.repos, then, and this question mark is basically then, render out a paragraph that says number of repos is this.state.repos. And this colon is what represents this else clause. So if this.state.repos exists, then render out this paragraph, else render out this paragraph that says please enter a username. Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of there. Okay, now let's put this to test again. So if we don't have a username, it's going to ask us to enter a username, and if we type in a username, press submit, and we should get the number of repos, which is 46. Let's just type in another one. I'm just going to type in my name, press submit. There we go. This is working brilliantly. Okay, so what if we press the button without entering a value? As you can see that the application kind of breaks because it gives an error. So to fix that, all we have to do is just make a check there. So right before we make this Axios call, let's just go ahead and cut that. Say if user, so remember this user is the value, so this is the same as saying if user equals true. Okay, so if user, then perform all these steps, else just return. So if the user exists, then perform these steps, else return the function, or that means close the function and don't do anything at all. So now if I press save, go back to the web browser, and I keep on submitting, and it's not giving me an error because we have made a check. So now if I type in a username, press submit, and there we go. So this is all that we needed to do in this video. So I hope you found this video helpful, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.